Hello everybody, SlimKirby here, and welcome to, I guess you could call this the finale for the Undertale project. Although I'd say the last video is more the finale. This is more of a Slim Talks video where I'm just going to kind of talk about the game, talk about the project, talk about my overall impression of Undertale, and just kind of answer some of the questions I've been getting throughout the project. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing for this, so don't expect like any gameplay whatsoever. This is literally just going to be a giant video of me talking about Undertale. So I hope you guys enjoy what I have to say about the game. I don't mind if some of you guys skip this video, but that's essentially what I'm going to be doing for this, because in a lot of ways the Undertale project is very, very important to me, because this was a game that I absolutely fell in love with at one point when I was going through it, and because I, recorded all of it when I was going through it the first time, I felt like, in a way there was some kind of meaning to the game, some meaning towards the project. So I have a lot to say about it. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, and I did kind of handle this project in a very unique way, because I recorded this a year ago and I released it a year after the fact. So that's pretty much what this video is going to be. If you're new to Undertale and you don't want to get spoiled, probably should avoid this video as well, because I will probably be talking about spoilers at some point. So avoid that at your own discretion. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. So let's go ahead and get started with the Undertale retrospective, or at least SlimKirby's retrospective of Undertale. So I originally got Undertale as a gift on Steam. One of my fans, Flame Chocobo, actually gifted the game to me along with several other games. And this was a game that I was personally interested in because at the time Undertale was really, really popular. I'd still argue that it is popular to this day, but definitely not to the same extent that it was kind of in early 2016, late 2015. The game was seriously like, it was everywhere. Like, there were so many people who loved it. You'd see like tweets nonstop from people making Undertale jokes and stuff of that nature. It actually won the Game FAQ's Best Games of All Time poll that was going on around that time. So safe to say there were a lot of people who just really, really loved this game, and because it was kind of a new thing going on, it definitely got a lot of coverage from a lot of different people. So I was very interested in the game. I was happy that I got it, so thank you, Flame Chocobo, for the gift. It does mean a lot to me, and I really, really appreciate it. And when I was getting ready to play the game, it was actually another person who I'm very familiar with, OdinSpack33. He actually convinced me that when I did my first playthrough of Undertale, that I should record it, because Undertale, he had played it recently, and he felt that it was a game that definitely means a lot more to you the first time you play it, because you're not really sure what to expect from the game. It plays a lot on your first reactions and stuff of that nature, and because of how successful, or well, at least successful in terms of my feelings about it, because the Walking Dead playthroughs are some of my most favorite playthroughs, because I love the blind first reaction type of commentary to those playthroughs, I was like, that's probably a good idea. So I decided to do the same thing with Undertale. I wasn't sure when I was going to release the project, because there were a lot of things I wanted to do last year. So I kind of just kept it in my video files for a very, very long time. Eventually I moved it over to my external hard drive. I still wasn't ready for it. And then when we got closer to my 10-year anniversary, I kind of was feeling, this might be the time where I could release the Undertale project. So that's what I did, and that's pretty much how the playthrough is blind, despite actually, it not being blind. Like, I knew what happened in the game for like over a year before I actually released it. But you guys are seeing my legitimate first blind playthrough of the game. So that's pretty much the story of how the Undertale playthrough got started. And looking back on it now, would I do something like that again? Probably not. Like, I'm obviously going to, do blind playthroughs still, like in the future and whatnot. But I'm probably not going to hold on to the footage for as long. I'm not sure if this is something that actually happens, but I actually had the footage kind of sitting in my external hard drive for a long time, And when I went back to edit it, there were like a lot of weird video issues. I'm sure you guys probably noticed there were times where the footage lagged and skipped around quite a bit. I don't really know why or how it did that, but I'm wondering if it's just because it was untampered raw footage for a very long time. I don't know if it degrades over time or anything like that, but regardless, when I came back to it and noticed that it was like that, I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be a nightmare. And truth be told, that's why, well, I guess it really wouldn't matter because I never really missed an update or anything. But there were times where editing took me a ridiculous long time to get through because the footage was not in the best of shape. And even when I switched, because I did like the neutral route and the pacifist route with Camtasia, and then by that point, that's when I started working with OBS for like screen capture. So I moved over to that for the Genocide route and the Genocide recordings. And even then, like, the video footage still screwed up in a few places. Not as much as the first two playthroughs, but still, it was still a little hard to work with. So I'm wondering if maybe, like, in the future I just shouldn't do that again, and I should probably be working with the footage when it's more fresh, I guess you could say. So yeah, that's pretty much why I'd probably never do something like this again. And you guys know, I'm not like super partial to blind playthroughs in the first place. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being kind of suggested of how to play the game. I kind of like experiencing the game on my own first, then kind of doing my research on the game, and then when I do my playthrough, I have stuff I can talk about throughout the playthrough as I learn more about the game and stuff of that nature. So, yeah, I definitely don't see myself doing that again. But I'm still very happy that I did it this way because Undertale is definitely a game you want to experience for your first time playing the game as opposed to like watching the game and knowing everything about the game. So if anyone wants to try Undertale, I definitely recommend it. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Honestly, even if you've seen me play it, I still feel like even when you play it the first time, you'll still have your own reactions to things as well. So even if it's like not like your first experience with playing or seeing Undertale, I think you'll still get something from it. And it's a game experience I definitely do recommend. So it's on Steam. I think it's actually on PS4 now too. It's been kind of moving across some different platforms now. But I think Steam is probably the best place where you could play it. The keyboard controls are pretty simple, and if you have a USB controller, you can plug that in and get some use out of that as well. So yeah, Undertale, very, very great game. I'll be talking more about it in this video, obviously. But definitely if you want to play it, I wholeheartedly recommend it. I know that the game is kind of mixed when it comes to people who talk about the game. There's always people who really, really love the game, almost fanatically, who will say, like, this is the best game ever, and then they'll push, like, a lot of the jokes on you. But there's also people who really, really hate the game and wish it to die out. I know there were a lot of people in my comments section that were like, oh my god, will this ever end already? Because they're just tired of seeing Undertale. And while I understand kind of the points from both sides, because obviously when you love a game, like, you want to talk about it. So I kind of get that. But I also understand there's a game you're just not into. Hearing about it nonstop can be a little distracting as well. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to personal preference. And I will admit that Undertale is a game that, while I personally loved it, I can understand how there would be people who don't really like it as much. So at the end of the day, it's all subjective. You may like it, you may hate it, you may really love it, you may really hate it. That's just kind of what this game is. It definitely kind of goes to the extremes of you either really love this game or you really hate this game. My advice to people, if you're ever interacting with a group of gamers, try to avoid being that extreme with it. If people really, really love the game, let them love the game. But if people really, really hate the game, don't push the game on them either, because it all comes down to opinion. You may like a game, you may hate the game. That's just the way it is. I don't think the game is amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think the game is very good and it's worth an experience and a playthrough of some sort. If you don't like it, well, you still got to experience it, and I think that's what's important in the long run. So honestly, just whenever you just hear the subject of Undertale, if you don't really want to talk about it, just don't talk about it. Don't, like, insert yourself into the conversation just to say, I'm tired of this game. This game sucks. I'm sick of hearing about it. Because that's not really fair to the people who do want to talk about it, because they really, really enjoyed their playthrough of the game and they want to talk about it with other people. You can't deny them that, but at the same time, I do agree that people shouldn't be forcing the game down your throats either. So that's something that I feel like people could really, really learn to do, to just make a more positive gaming environment, because like I said before, there are definitely extremes when it comes to Undertale. There are heavy extremes. I honestly felt like, in terms of the comments for my playthrough, I think I had a really, really good comments section throughout the entire playthrough. There were people who kind of at first were kind of in that extreme mindset. I remember when I killed Toriel, there were like some people who were like, "Oh my god, you killed Goat Mom, I'm not watching this playthrough anymore." Which I think is kind of ridiculous, because that's kind of the point of the game. You're supposed to figure out that you're not supposed to kill people, and you may not know that at first. In your first playthrough, you're not supposed to know that until you go through the game. And I think it's kind of ridiculous to just kind of critique someone that harshly just because you already are familiar with the game mechanics and stuff of that nature. So I found that a little odd, but it may just be people who have been like just super invested in the game and the plot and the characters, which after playing the pacifist route, I can understand that, but I still am at least a level-headed enough to think that, well, come on, it's a first playthrough. The first playthrough, you really can't fault anyone for doing something wrong or doing something different. Like, seriously, like, that's the point of a blind playthrough. You're not supposed to know. That just really, really bothered me. But aside from like stuff like that, the comments section I think was very good throughout the entire playthrough. There were people who didn't really spoil things. There were people who kind of gave tips and like information for Easter eggs and stuff, which I wouldn't say that's really like spoiling the blind playthrough or anything, because again, I had this done a year, so I wasn't being spoiled anything. But there are definitely people who hadn't played the game before, and I wanted them to at least have the satisfaction of not having further details of the game spoiled. But even then, all the stuff that was given wasn't a big deal, and I'm not going to point fingers or heavily criticize anybody, because for the most part, I think I had a really, really good comment section for this playthrough. And from what I understand, Madame Wario actually did a blind playthrough of Undertale very recently as well. And from what I understand, her playthrough actually got ripped pretty hard by commenters, and that's one of the things she didn't really enjoy about the playthrough, is because of the comments she got. So it was really nice to not have to deal with anything so extreme in my particular playthrough. But I can understand how people could like heavily lose interest in the game because of a blind playthrough like this, just because of the commenters. So if you're ever watching an Undertale playthrough, like, just be courteous to the person playing the game. Let them kind of fall in love with the game themselves. Like, don't try to force them into a certain mindset of the game, otherwise they won't enjoy it, and that's just the way it is. So I had a lot of fun doing this project, even just re-watching it again, actually kind of watching it along with you guys who are kind of experiencing this when you guys first saw the videos. So it was a really, really good experience, and I appreciate you guys being very nice throughout the entire thing. It really was a great playthrough. Honestly, major contender for Project of the Year for me, but, you know, we still have a few months left. I'm not going to actually say that for certain for me just yet. There's also a lot of other playthroughs I really, really enjoyed this year, so I'm not going to disregard those, because this was, I think, a pretty good year for projects. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say about as far as the playthrough is concerned. I wish I would have maybe handled the Genocide playthrough a little bit differently, but again, it's such a tricky thing just because of how awkward that playthrough is, as I'll probably be getting into that. I guess I could kind of talk about that next. The 3 main playthroughs of Undertale. So there are 3 main playthroughs. There's the neutral playthrough, there's the pacifist playthrough, and there is the Genocide playthrough. The neutral playthrough is kind of doing a mix of both pacifist and genocide, to the extent where you don't save everybody, but you also don't kill everybody. There might be some enemies you save, or some bosses you save. There might be some enemies or bosses that you kill along the way. That's pretty much what a neutral playthrough is, and at the very end of a neutral playthrough, you kind of have a bunch of different endings you can get, depending on what you did throughout the playthrough. Like if you killed one major boss, maybe the ending changes significantly because that major boss doesn't take over or whatever. So that's kind of how I would best describe the neutral route. It's kind of the giant in between of the other two extreme playthroughs. So for a neutral playthrough, I mean, it's what it is. It's probably what your first playthrough is going to be, just because you've never played Undertale before, you're not sure if you want to kill an enemy or not, you're not sure if you want to save everyone or not, so it's probably going to be the first playthrough you do. And as a first playthrough, I think the neutral route is really good. It kind of introduces you to all the mechanics of the game. It does introduce you to all the characters as well. You just kind of have a good feeling when you're going like throughout the game in a neutral path, just because you're kind of experienced in the game as a new player of the game, and you're just kind of trying to learn how to adapt to this weird world, because you're so convinced that the monsters are going to be hostile, but when you kind of look at all the monsters, they're really not that hostile at all. They're defensive, they try to protect themselves, but they're not really necessarily out to kill you. Even Undyne, who is clearly out to destroy you, even kind of holds back a few times too. So it's kind of just trying to learn that, well, okay, these monsters, they're good monsters, they're not bad people, they're just trying to do what comes natural to them, and you know, as you do that, you're kind of prepping yourself for the pacifist run, in a sense where it's like, okay, I don't really want to kill everybody, and I think the neutral path does a good way of kind of setting up the pacifist route, so to speak. So I don't have anything bad to say about the neutral route. I think it introduces the game pretty well, as that is probably going to be the first playthrough you are going to do for Undertale. So it was a good path. I did really enjoy it. Then we get to the pacifist route, which I absolutely loved. Like, I liked the neutral route, but I absolutely loved the pacifist route, because this is just where I think the game just shines brilliantly. Because, for one, the characters in Undertale are freaking amazing. I loved every single character in this game. There's not really a character I hate. There's some characters that, you know, I wish would have had a little more screen time and you'd actually learn more about them. One of the main examples probably being Asgore, because you just kind of see him at the end of the game, and then at the end of the game of the pacifist route, he's just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm one of the main guys now, but like, you only see him for like the last percentage of the game, so it's like hard to be that invested in him. But in all the other characters, because you're doing a pacifist route, you kind of have your own little cutscenes and experiences with them, and it just makes the game like a lot more lively, a lot more fun, and just a lot more interesting. Like, there was one aspect I loved about every single freaking character. I loved Toriel. I loved how sweet she was, how motherly she was, and after kind of learning kind of her backstory with what happened to her her other children, it just kind of makes sense why she is so motherly and so protective of you. I love Papyrus, how he's trying to become captain of the Royal Guard, but he's really just a doofus who's just trying to find a friend, and it's just like, it's so hard not to be friends with him just because of the kind of character that he is. There's Undyne, who's like just very heroic and stoic, and you like want her to succeed, but you also don't want to die either, so you have to kind of find a way to first survive her onslaught, but then just kind of try to find a way to become friends with her and kind of find common ground for both of you. Then there's Alphys, who, you know, very geeky character. I can sympathize with geeks because that's kind of the type of person I am. But the thing I liked about Alphys in the pacifist route is that in the neutral route, there were a lot of questions I had about her, and there were just like some parts of the story where I was just very confused with her motives. But then when you get to the pacifist route, you learn why. You learn that she's made a bunch of mistakes, and she's just trying to correct them, and just kind of comes to a point where she's just very, very conflicted. And then when you go to the true laboratory and learn about everything, it just makes so much more sense. And I actually like the character of Alphys a lot more after that. I would have wished she would have been like more vocal about it, obviously, but she's obviously not that kind of character. She's not very vocal. She's not really sure how to interact with people, so I can kind of see that. Mettaton was a joy to interact with as well. I freaking love the boss fight for Mettaton, the Mettaton EX fight. That's probably my favorite battle in the entire game. Not to mention the music that goes along with it, but just doing that battle in general was a lot of fun. So, like, there's just so many really, really great characters, and just going through the entire game and interacting with all of them was just a huge, huge joy for me. And just kind of getting to the end of that pacifist route, kind of having the huge bombshell dropped that Flowey was actually, I guess, like, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm probably getting something a little inaccurate here, but, like, Flowey was, I guess, a flower that had the soul of Azrael or something. They're kind of connected in a way. I don't exactly know all the details because it was definitely a part of the game. I kind of, I don't want to say I glossed through, but, like, again, just, you know, very, very precise technicalities that I don't really feel like getting into. And then just kind of, once you finish the pacifist route, kind of making peace with him and just kind of resolving that entire plot point as he goes, and then just kind of helps rebuilding the world after he tried to destroy it, basically, was just a really, really great ending, and I just freaking love the pacifist route because of that. I mentioned that in the playthrough, but I was actually, like, really trying to hold back tears at that point, just because, like, just pure emotion was overwhelming me at that point. And I think that pacifist route alone is why people absolutely love Undertale, just because of just the pure, raw emotion that you feel during that part of the game. So I really, really love that. That's pretty much what got me to fall in love with Undertale, just because it just really, really connected with me. Toby Fox literally connected the dots perfectly for the pacifist route, and just made the game an amazing experience. And with that being said, then we move on to the Genocide route, where that completely falls apart. Now, let me just say this right now. I understand what Toby Fox was going for. I get the point of the Genocide route. It's supposed to be the terrible route. It's supposed to be the route where, quite literally, you do everything wrong. And because of that, you don't like what you've done. You kind of regret your decisions, as the gamer anyway. But since you're on the Genocide route, it's like, well, I've already done what I've started. I may as well keep continuing. And let me just say, it was really, really difficult to do that, because my main problem with the Genocide route is I get that that's what it was going for. I get that it was supposed to be kind of the boring and lifeless playthrough, because quite literally, you're killing everyone. You're killing the world of Undertale. I understand that that's what he was going for, and I think he does do that well. If that's his point, then yes, he connected that point. But the gameplay itself is still just not very fun. Like, I hated going back and forth in all the different rooms to exhaust the kill counter. It just made the game just drag on, and just, like, I want to continue, but I gotta keep killing all these enemies, otherwise I'm gonna pretty much just do a route I've already done. So it just was really, really hard to get through the Genocide route, because it was just so dull, it was so lifeless, and I just hated it. I really, really hated the Genocide route. Now, there were a few things I liked. Like, I did enjoy kind of the challenge of the super boss fights on the Genocide route, but I enjoyed them for different reasons. I enjoyed them because they were challenges that I could overcome on my spare time if I wanted to. Like, beating Sans, like, I absolutely love that, because that's probably the hardest boss fight I've ever done in a video game. It took me 4.5 hours to beat that guy, but when I beat that guy, just the feeling of victory just, like, really, really got to me, and that was, like, one of my most proudest gaming moments because of how freaking hard that was. But everything else, though, like, again, just the Genocide route is just, I just really, really didn't like it, and it honestly dropped the game some points for me. To kind of better illustrate that, after the neutral route, I'd say that probably put Undertale in my top 50 games of all time. The pacifist route put Undertale in my top 5 games of all time. After Genocide, I have to say, and I mean, not just the Genocide route, I can't just blame the Genocide route for this, but it was also just kind of after time went on, I kind of, like, reworked my thoughts, and just kind of, like, after thinking about it for a while, I was like, okay, maybe it's not that high. But, like, after I did the Genocide route, and after kind of reflecting on the entire experience overall, I'd say it's not top 5, not top 10, but very, very close to top 10. Definitely top 20, maybe even top 15. But, like, I wouldn't say Undertale's in my top 10 games of all time. But it was a game that was there for a while. It was definitely my favorite game that I played in 2016. Because it was just a game that connected with me so well. And I think the Genocide route, although I wouldn't say that's the only reason it dropped so much, just reflecting over everything, the entire game as a whole. But the Genocide route, I think, definitely left more to be desired. Because it's kind of weird. Like, this is going to be kind of a very weird example here. But I feel like if there is a part of the game that's supposed to be, like, the ugly route or the bad ending or whatever, for other games, like, I still go for it because it is the bad ending. And I do it just to, you know, have it, and it doesn't really bother me that much. This was a bad ending that really, really bothered me. And it bothered me in just how boring and monotonous it was. And I didn't have fun with it. At least for bad endings in other games, like, yeah, I may not like the ending, it may be the least rewarding ending, but it's still an ending that I got for my effort, and I didn't, like, hate going through it. It's just, you know, I went through it and got the bad ending. This was just a bad ending that I went for that I just didn't really like because of mainly how boring it was. That's all it is. Again, I get that's the point, and I get that Toby Fox is clever for doing that, but, like, it still wasn't that fun. And that's just kind of my big thing about it, is when I'm playing video games, I look at the entire experience overall, and I try not to think about all of those, like, little nuances, like it being bad on purpose, because that's the point. Like, that just doesn't make sense with me. I get why he did it, but, like, that's just the thing that really bothered me about the Genocide route. So, overall, pacifist route, best route, neutral ending route. It's a good route, definitely the in-between, depending, well, especially considering the two extremes there are. But, like, you know, it's definitely a good first playthrough route, and I have to give it credit for that. And then the Genocide route was just not a route I enjoyed really at all. Now that we talked about the main storylines of the game, I kind of want to go into some of the other things I really, really appreciated about the game. And the one thing I can't end this video without talking about is the frickin' music. The music of this game is absolutely incredible. I love so many of the songs in this game. It's just such an amazing soundtrack. All the battle themes are absolutely amazing, like just from the normal battle theme, which is really, really good. But going into all the boss themes, you have Heartache, Bone Trousel, Spider Dance, Death by Glamour, Megalovania, Hopes and Dreams. Just so many amazing songs for just, I absolutely love the soundtrack. There's one thing I do on my YouTube account is you know, I have a giant playlist of just video game music, and I use it for my streams. It's my grinding playlist whenever I'm playing a game, whereas there's like a lot of level grinding and stuff. Sometimes I put on that playlist just to listen to some music while that's going on. But I also just have a few individual playlists, and some of them are just music playlists from one particular game. I have a playlist for Donkey Kong Country 2, I have a playlist for Dynasty Warriors 3, I have a playlist for Kirby Superstar, just games with music I absolutely love and adore. And I will admit, Undertale is another game where I have a playlist of the music just saved in my playlist folder. It's private view, obviously, because I want to keep my public playlist just to be my YouTube projects and stuff, but you know, I really only make playlists for just one game when it's a soundtrack I absolutely love. I even used to have a playlist of just Super Smash Bros. Music, but I think at some point I got rid of that for some reason. I don't really know why, I just did. Maybe it's because I was planning that grinding playlist and I figured, like, what's the point? But still, like, I have a playlist for Undertale, and that's just how much I love the soundtrack. It's just really, really good. And not just the battle themes, but also just kind of the regular themes of the game. The main Undertale theme, the map music for the Snowden area and the Hotlands area. Just really, really, really good music. And I have to give Toby Fox credit because the music for the game is absolutely incredible. And I just love, like, listening to it. And there's just so many, like, tunes in the game that are, like, my favorite songs of the game. So Gotta really talk about that. The gameplay itself is very good. The battling system, I think, is very unique for the type of battling system that it is, being kind of an RPG turn-based bullet hell type of game. I thought was a really interesting direction, but I think it works very well too. Like, it may seem kind of intimidating at first because you have to be very active with avoiding attacks and stuff, but like, it's something that will take practice, and then once you kind of get a feel for how an enemy works and operates, you can avoid any attack no problem. That's basically how I got through the Sans fight, because it took me so many times. But while I was trying to get through that fight, I was also learning his pattern too, so I could actually adapt to all of his attacks and the order of which he did his attacks. So I thought that was kind of a cool way to approach the game, and I think it worked very well. The graphics are very simple but very basic, but they work for what it is. Like, the characters are very colorful and very expressive, and it was just kind of really cool to see that throughout the game too. Overall, Undertale, I think, was just a really good game, and I just really enjoyed a lot of things about it. There are some things I didn't enjoy about it, but they were very few and far between, and I think that's what's important for a game of this nature. So overall, if I had to give Undertale a score, I would probably give it maybe an 8, maybe a 9 out of 10. I'd say probably closer to a 9 out of 10, because it's definitely not perfect, but it was a game that I really enjoyed, and like I said, it was the best game that I played last year. Didn't come out in 2016, I think it came out in 2015, but in terms of 2016 games that I played, that was the one that was the most memorable to me. One of the things I actually found interesting about this game was, after I was done with it the first time, I did a lot of research on it, obviously, but I also took a look at a lot of the fan-created stuff. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. There are definitely a lot of fans out there who can make some pretty cringe-worthy stuff when it comes to fandoms and other mediums like Undertale that have a lot of supporters. But I have to admit, in a lot of the things I did find, there is a lot of creativity out there in terms of artwork, in terms of like parody videos and stuff. Like, I think people are very creative, and they have done a good job with that, but there are definitely some cringe-worthy stuff out there. I get that there are just some people who got really attached to the game, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, just as long as it doesn't, you know, encroach on people's ability to not want to be a part of that. Like, obviously, if someone doesn't like Undertale as much as you do, that doesn't make them less of a person than you are. They just like the game less than you. And then people who don't like it, like, they don't deserve to be judged or chastised for not liking the game. They just don't like the game. Just stuff of that nature. I kind of talked about that already. But again, just kind of seeing all that stuff was kind of cool, to just see how the Undertale community kind of just came about, and in terms of the creativity they have, at least in some cases. Again, not going to go into those extreme examples. But yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say about that. Now I'm going to actually answer a few questions that I got throughout the project. Not very many, and there's some I've technically already answered before, I guess. But one question I got a lot was, what is your favorite music track from the game? After thinking about it long and hard, I'd probably have to give it to Hopes and Dreams. Just an epic boss fight that summarizes the best ending of the game. It just was a really great battle theme to end on, and it was just a theme that just like really caught my attention. That's why at the end of my 10-year anniversary clip show, I used that song as a part of the looking back at all the projects I've done. It's just a very epic and victory sounding theme that I just thought would work well with that. And, you know, after reflecting on all of that, that's probably my favorite song. Definitely shout-outs to Megalovania, Spider Dance, and Death by Glamour, though. Those are also songs that I really enjoy as well, and songs that were in pretty close contention for my favorite song of the game. Another question I've got is my favorite character of the game. And this is why I didn't mention him earlier, because I was kind of waiting to this section to talk about him. But my favorite character in the game is Sans. Sans just kind of really spoke to me in a sense of, this is the character that I relate the most with. A character who's very easygoing, almost to a detriment. Someone who jokes around more than actually takes himself seriously. But when he does take something seriously, he really does it. Whether you're talking about the Genocide route, where he's like, you know, if you keep going down this route, you're going to have a bad time, because I'm not going to let you get away with murdering all of my friends. and he comes back and he swings hard in probably the hardest battle in the entire game. And then just kind of beyond that, in like the neutral and pacifist routes, when you kind of learn that Sans is there to guide you along the way because he made a promise with Toriel that he'd look after you and protect you, which I thought was a very, very sweet thing of him to do. And honestly, that's the kind of person I am. I take my promises seriously. When I tell someone I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And it's just like seeing that from Sans just like got me a huge, huge, huge burst of respect for him, just because of that's just me. That's the kind of person who I am, and it was kind of cool to see a character kind of like that. Plus, all of his jokes are hilarious. Like, the humor he brings to the table is just absolutely incredible, and I just really, really like that about him. So yeah, those are the two most prevalent questions I asked. If I got more questions, I definitely answered it in this video. But I think I am going to actually kind of wrap things up here. I've been talking for a very long time, and I have to make a lot of cuts because of a lot of the misspeakings I did during this. But I want to thank all of you guys for listening to this. This was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing I did. I kind of talked about doing that in the Genocide route at the very end, and when I got to that point of the editing, I'm like, oh, right, I did say I would do that. And I was actually kind of wondering if I should still do that or not, but at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, I can probably spend some time talking about the game. I have a lot to say about the game, and I think that this video speaks for that. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to wrap it up on the Undertale playthrough. Thank you to everybody for watching. This was a blast to go through. If Toby Fox ever does another game, chances are I will be taking a look at that, and I will probably be playing that for the YouTube channel as well. I'm probably not going to do it the same way I did this project, though. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to do a blind leftover project from like a previous year, because again, just kind of a weird thing to do, but I felt like it would have been a very appropriate project for my 10-year anniversary, so that's why I went for it. So this has been SlimKirby. Thank you everybody for watching. I will talk to you guys later. Later, folks.